I'm Billy to everyone.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, thank you for accepting this interview with us. And we know we have some conflicts to coordinate dates and now to be at the same time, but well, we're here. So, as we said on the messages on Twitter, we are grateful to be able to exchange with you today. So first of all, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you mind if we record the conversation to post it on the Twitter account or to share it with our
No,
classmates?
no,
Or
recording is fine. I'm
it's fine.
I'm very accustomed to giving
Okay.
interviews on the internet and having them recorded. So please
Okay.
do that if that would be helpful for you.
Thank you. Okay, it's perfect. Um, so we have prepared some questions to ask you, but feel free to not answer them or just explain to us what do you want to explain. And if you are any questions about our aspirations in the masters or about us, or just feel free to ask us.
Okay. Yeah, I would be interested for you to tell me just a little about your program. I don't know how things are in Europe, but in general, in the United States, programs around user experience come in two categories, and one is centered around technology in the computer science department, and then the other, it's human factors that's usually in a psychology department or some kind of human behavior department. So I don't know how it's done there. Could you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, like for us, we are doing masters that come from the IT program. Like
Okay.
we did IT license. Like how do we say, Marianne?
undergraduate.
The bachelor,
Okay.
undergraduate, and now we are doing the masters. But yeah, it does exist also the masters that come from the psychology.
Okay. So your university has both. Most universities in the U.S. do not have both. They usually have one or the other.
Okay.
Okay. Very well. Then that helps me have some context that you are coming at it from the standpoint of a technology professional, more so than
Yeah.
than a scientific perspective. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I let Timothée start with the first question.
It's gonna be Sofiane that will ask the first question.
So
But that's okay.
I will start. We have learned that you're a designer, a developer, an author, a speaker. So could you tell us a little bit more about your career path?
Yes, I began at university when there was no computer science degree that long ago, but I did learn programming, Fortran and BASIC there, and began my career in doing development of applications in the late 1970s. 1978 was the first time that I wrote code for money. But I found that I was always more interested in the problem solving aspects of computer software than I was the technical aspects. For me, coding is a chore. I do it because that's the way you express the solution to a problem. But the interesting part is solving the problem. And as a part of that, if you're really going to solve problems, software systems are written for people, and if you don't understand what they need and what works best for them, then you solve the problem very effectively. Right. So I did take a lot of science when I was in university, and actually a little known fact about me, I attended medical school for a year before deciding I did not really want to pursue that. I did not want to be a doctor. But that says something about, I have a deeper background in science, all kinds of science, than the typical technology person. So I was always interested in the users, and I was I applied the science of what I knew about human behavior, and I did that from the very first software applications that I wrote, but no one really cared until about 12 years ago.
Yeah, it's quite new, all of this.
During most of the time from when I began up until 2008 or so, just the fact that you could make software do something new, that some application, you could make an application for a user that didn't exist last month, that was enough to be successful. Just making something new possible. But with the advent of, two things happened the same year in 2008. First, the iPhone came out, and Apple, as a design-centric company, drove design into the mainstream, and people's expectations began to go up. And secondly, Microsoft produced a new set of technologies that allowed desktop applications and even some web applications to be done with technology that would let you be innovative, that would let you do new kinds of applications with visualization. And I mean, as an example of the technology changes, technologies before that didn't really allow layering of so you can think about all the things that you do to make data visualization good, often involves putting things on top of one another to get the final effect that you want. But we didn't really have the technology to do that until 2008. So those two things came together to shift me from primarily working on software development, including code and API design and architecture and things like that. It shifted me from that into UX design, and it gradually took over and became the thing I do most. I still do write code. I still keep up with the technology, but it's no more than 20%, 25% maybe of my time. Now I spend the majority of my time on UX design, and that just increased. That the shift over to UX design probably took place about 2012 when it became the thing I did the most. So I have now about 12 years very immersed in UX design. I worked on it before, and I read design books, and I really tried to understand how to do design. In fact, the first book I ever wrote in 1999 has a section on how you go about designing computer interfaces. Now, I was naive then about, I didn't know it in as much depth as I do now, but you can see that was sort of my, even from the earliest days I was in this industry, that caring about the user and giving them something that fit their needs was my primary priority.
Okay.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Well, it's interesting.
Another little tidbit that fits into that you might like. I started writing mouse-driven software in 1984, and I didn't. Nobody else in the PC world really was writing mouse-driven software at the time. But to me, that was the obvious way for a user to interact.
Yeah.
Hey, hang on just a second. I'm going to show you something.
Okay.
This is the very first Microsoft mouse.
The first.
The very first generation. You can see the port is a serial port. Let's see if I can get that up in front of it so you can see.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
In which year? It is,
that was I believe I got this in 1984 or maybe 1985.
Okay.
We were even not born.
Not
yet.
even born yet.
This mouse is older than you.
It's older than us. Damn.
And of course, it's not functional anymore. The drivers don't work or anything, but I keep it as a keepsake. See, you've never seen this. It has a little ball that rolls around here.
Yeah,
See,
we know.
You're probably aware of that. The first mice did. Yeah. So I thought that's how long I've been focusing on trying to do things better for the users.
Wow. And can you I didn't like understand well the thing about the layers. Like,
let's see if I can. Well, Windows software up until that time was driven by, except for games, was driven by what's called the Win32 GDI, graphics device interface.
Okay.
That was developed in the first versions of Windows. In that world, you can't, every piece of the screen, every little rectangular piece is owned by one process. And you can't put like a translucent layer on top. So something as simple as, I mean, you see, for example, in web software, we can do this now. We didn't used to be able to do it. That if a website wants to bring up a window on top of the web page, very often it will gray out the background. You've seen that. Now that's done by putting a translucent gray rectangle layered on top of the web page. Well, there's all kinds of interesting things you can do with visualization that way, you see. I'm trying to think if I could get a picture of a fairly recent example that I did where I have data sets, maximum and minimum for different periods of time. And you could imagine it being temperature, maximum and minimum temperature in a day. I originally developed it for minimum and maximum pulse, heartbeat in a day. And so you could see like let's suppose you had 2 weeks worth or a month's worth, but you wanted to compare one time period to another, 1 month to another. Well, you could put them on the screen in different locations and you can kind of visually look back and forth. But imagine taking one of the periods and sliding it over so it's layered on top of the other. Now, and make them different colors or something.
Yeah.
So now you're able to very easily see where the differences are because they're layered. And you make the top typically translucent so the bottom layer shows through better.
Yeah.
That kind of technology wasn't really practical until for general software until about 2008. And then it became also available in web technologies with HTML5, which I think probably 2012, 2014, somewhere in there that it became. So you can see it in web apps now. At first, you could only do it in desktop apps.
Okay.
Did that make sense of what the layering is all about?
Yeah. I understand.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And what's the technology that permit to do that in 2008?
In 2008, when Microsoft introduced Windows Vista, they included a technology called Windows Presentation Foundation, or WPF, and a markup language called XAML, which is still in use pretty widely for desktop apps, and is in fact, that is the descendant of that technology, including the markup language, is what creates the shell for Windows 10 today. If you log into Windows 10, that technology is being used to project that user interface. It's several generations past that, of course, but the first generation was introduced actually in early 2007 when Windows Vista was released.
Okay.
Thank
you. So we saw that you are a Microsoft MVP. What does it mean exactly, and what are the steps to follow to achieve it?
Well, for a long time, about 15 years, I was a member of 2 programs at Microsoft. The first program I was in was called the Microsoft Regional Director Program. That's third-party people that help them put on events and give advice to some of their internal people. There are about 130 or 140 of those people around the world. You have a couple in France. And so that was my primary program. And then later I also received the MVP award for first Visual Basic and later Windows development, Windows just when general Windows development. However, I'm no longer in the MVP program now because I do so much less technology now. I do more UX design. They're talking about switching me over to something in the design space, but the regional director program has long been more important to me, and I've been a member of that program now for 23 years, and some brilliant people around the world that I get to collaborate with, and so yeah, that program, as I said, that program is also used to for some confidential kind of advice. I've been used at various times to talk to people inside Microsoft, all the way up to the CTO, that we would have various working groups, task forces, to sort of give Microsoft a little bit of an outside view of what they're doing and where we think they should go. Because most of the people that work at Microsoft have been there a long time.
Yeah.
And that's good in many respects. But then the outside influences, sometimes it's very helpful for them to see some more outside understanding of where their technology is going and how it's used.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
So, okay. I had a question, we visited the Next Version website.
Yes.
And I saw that it's written that you, under your description, that you're a free thinker, something like that. Yeah, I found it quite funny but very interesting. So I just thought about it, and the question is, does a good designer follow the rules established or reject what it has been studied to try new things? Good designer, made or born? What do you think about it?
Well,
it's complicated.
It is a complicated question to answer, and there's a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Here's my philosophy of it is this. Most people in the technology space can learn some of the essentials of design. The principles, for example, that say, if you group things together on the screen, people unconsciously assume they are related because they're close together. Okay, that's a fundamental principle. Almost anyone can learn that, and they can learn a simple process to sketch some things before they start writing code to get better results. And most developers can. There are a few developers that just are so centered on the technology that they can't.
Yeah.
And there are also technologists who lack one essential capability to do any kind of design, and that is they can't really look inside other people's minds. They think that if they like it this way, why would anyone else ever like it differently? Mm-hmm. They just can't think outside their own conception. So those people are no good at design. But that's a minority of technologies. Most people can understand users at some intuitive level and do a capable level of design. And then there is innovative design. See, that first kind of design is just don't make mistakes. Don't give people something that it just can't be understood. Most of the design at that minimal competent level is done by copying other designs that they've seen somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, that's better than giving users stuff they don't understand.
Yeah.
So most people can do that. But then you move into, as technology moves on and gives you capabilities like that layering I talked about. Very few people in the technology space use that layering technology in their designs today. And we've had it now for 12 years plus. So in order to take that technology, and you think about all the 3D stuff, the HoloLens and all the technologies that come with that. In order to work in that space and leverage technologies to their fullest and do innovation, now you need to be able to have that unbounded way of thinking because normally we are creatures of habit. If you take someone who has been developing software for 20 years, they will keep developing software that way. That's very
sure.
natural. So
Yeah.
the ability to completely break out of that and go, we're going to work with a blank sheet of paper, and we're not going to be overly influenced by what's in the past. We're going to question the assumptions of how software is done. That takes a certain way of thinking, and the capacity for that is comparatively rare.
Yeah. So, do you think you are more of the kind of designers that follow the rules, or more of the kind of designers that try new things?
Oh no, we try new things.
Yeah, that's what
There
I
are
thought.
people who say we make the rules. In some
Ah,
2008.
You were there
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Well, in 2008, we produced a system on that new technology I talked about, WPF. And it was used for a couple of years as the standard demonstration by the Microsoft team of how to use that technology effectively. You can actually see that software in action. There's about an 8-minute YouTube.
oh yeah, can you give us the?
Well, just search my name, Billy Hollis, and the word staff links, STAFFLYNX. Links as in the animal. Staff links, and you'll see that video. And it broke every rule for business software at the time ever known. And it does not look amazingly new now, but in 2008, it was a complete departure from how business software was done. It was copied literally by 1,000 teams in WPF, because I run into people at conferences all the time who said, we took that design of staff links and adapted it to our own needs. And I'm always a little nervous when they say that, because in design, you design to a specific set of circumstances.
Yeah.
So that design worked for the people we designed it for. Salesmen for temporary staffing companies is who we were doing it. But it wasn't intended to be a universal design, and there are places it wouldn't fit. In fact, we had a company, a major Fortune 500 company here in the US, a team called us up and said, well, we tried this design and we don't think it really fits for us. Come and do one for us. And we did, and it looked completely different from that. It was another departure. So yeah, we really push the limits of what the technology can do, and we try to come up with not just, see, you have to be careful. Coming up with new ideas just for the sake of being different is not a good idea. Okay, that is not good design. And I see that too often, that misunderstanding by people who they've embraced design and they're definitely going to do everything different than they ever did. Well, different for the sake of different isn't good. Different because it's better is what's good. And that's what we strive to do. And one of the things that means is that the period of time to understand the problem there's, depending on the size of the project, it just has to be there, weeks sometimes, to observe users and understand and map out what the business flows are, the task flows. Until you understand where the problems are, you cannot possibly solve a problem you don't understand. So the process of design starts with that intense understanding and only then moves to ideas. I find that in the technology space, too many people want to leap into producing technology too quickly. They want to get to coding very fast. And they justify that with agile and things like that. Well, sorry, if you don't understand the problem and you don't go through some exercises to try to challenge the way things have been done in the past and come up with new ideas, then you're probably not going to really get any kind of innovative designs. Now, the good thing about innovative designs is they can have an amazing effect on user productivity. if you really match the way the user's jobs work and how they think, you can speed them up 10, 15, 20% or more. And if you have several hundred people using the software sped up that much, that's a lot of money. In fact, I created a spreadsheet to kind of calculate some of the savings from UX design based on productivity increases and fewer errors and things like that. Here, do we have a chat window here? I'll put the URL for you here.
The chat?
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see this document.
Yeah. You have to have Excel. There it is. Okay, so bit.ly/UX ROI estimator. I believe that's, try that and make sure that does go to the right place. Yeah. And oddly enough, I find I'm one of the few people in the design space that talk about return on investment. Just like I think most programmers produce software, most developers produce software because they love writing code. Most designers do design because they get emotional satisfaction from it.
Yeah.
And I don't, as I told you at the beginning, I'm not solving problems. And one of the problems to be solved is, can you make these investments pay off? Do you have my spreadsheet up there? You see the numbers there?
Yeah, it does lead to the right place.
Okay, good. So yeah, I'm one of the few people that talks about return on investment because I think it's very important. And there are, especially because if you're going to invest in design, and you think about this, if you're going to go do design in a company, there's someone higher up in the company who has to approve spending that money.
Yeah, that's the problem, yeah.
and that person isn't going to understand what you do or why. So being able to show them, look, you can get returns off of this. This isn't something that we spend just because we love doing it. It actually has an impact on the business. I think designers are in many cases missing a chance to justify what they do by talking about return.
Yeah. That was one of the questions actually like we are often faced with the question, why is UX important and things like that, and like the question was if it is really worth to spend money and resources to have a human-centered design. So you answered. Of course.
We've had cases where I think probably our best example so far is a company that has 9,000 users of their main system, and we think that they are saving at least $50 million, call it 40 million euros, a year, because of higher productivity and fewer errors.
Yeah.
As another example, we're working on a system now for a manufacturer, and I can't go into too much detail because it's proprietary. But the idea is, if they make production mistakes, those production mistakes often cost over €1 million. One mistake, they will produce things that people don't need and end up having to junk it. Okay, so our system is intended to help them stop having that number of errors. If our software only prevents 1 error per year, then we will have paid for all the design effort it took to come up with that. Plus, yeah. So no, that kind of return is I think important, and our community does not talk enough about it.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And just to kind of go down the ways that it saves money, just so that you have a complete list. Productivity, obviously, if you speed people up. If you prevent their errors, sometimes errors aren't that expensive, but when they're expensive, it makes a difference if you're doing lots of them. Reducing the training. Let me ask you a question. How long would you estimate for the typical corporate software system that a new employee requires? What time do they require to become proficient? capable with the software? What would you guess?
I
I
would
don't
say
A month?
2 years.
A month is usually the minimum. 2 months, sometimes longer. And I've heard companies tell me it takes 6 months.
6
So,
months.
yes, so better design systems reduce that time. So that when people come in, you're saving the time there. We've had systems that completely eliminated the need for an entire week of training.
Yeah.
The system was good enough, you could just sit down and kind of figure it out.
And you
So
did
you can- Wow.
The system that replaced had a week-long training. So there's training. If you sell software packages, either on the web as a service or even to install on the user's machines, then one of your main costs as a business is technical support.
Yeah.
People don't understand. They call up. Well, if you make better design software, you reduce technical support by quite a lot, and that's a big savings. If you sell software, better design leads to more sales, because people are naturally drawn to good design. Psychologically, when people recognize good design, intuitively, it feels good. They feel an affinity for it, which makes it easier to sell your software. So there's all kinds of ways design returns money.
Wow, it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
we have had lessons and courses about this, but we have never have specific examples like this of how much money is saved or how much time is saved, and it's crazy to have it.
Yes, it's scholar example. Having some real example, some I don't know how to say some real numbers.
Probably tangible is the English word you're looking for.
Tangible, I
Yeah.
think.
Tangible.
Thank you. I'm struggling to find my words.
Thank you. Well,
I'm gonna-
okay, we have more questions.
Yes, we're passing to
So another question of mine. I have weird questions, but I know. Like when you search Billie Hollis on Google, the first picture that you find is the one. I think it's your. Like it's a picture that is in all the internet about you, like giving a talk or something.
Yes.
And in the background is we can see the cover of the design of Everyday Things.
Yes.
Book?
Yes. That was the
From-
first design book I ever read.
Yeah, I know
And-
that Marianne has read
That's
it also.
the first design book I've ever read, but
Let me show you another. Hang on just a second.
Do you?
You may not know this, but the first edition of that book was not called
Yeah,
Design
know
of Everyday
this.
Things.
The psychology. I read this the other day. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and what happened was at that time they were putting the book in the self-help section of the bookstores
Because of the name.
because of the title. So when they did the second edition, the publisher
They
and
changed
the
it.
author decided to change it to the design.
Yeah, like wow, it's crazy. I recognize it because half of our teachers refer to the book in every class they do or every lesson they give us and everything. They always refer to the book, so I thought it was quite interesting.
Well,
so
it started me on the path of observing design in the real world, because that's really what the book is about. And my most famous example, which I'm known for actually, is panels of elevators. And
Okay.
there's a YouTube video for this too.
also,
If you type Billie Hollis plural site in YouTube, it's an extract from one of my UX courses talking about an elevator that I really saw and photographed, and talking about the design flaws in that elevator's control panel. Because I believe if you observe design in the real world, it makes you better at seeing good and bad design in software too. So that book started me down that path, and I got it, as you can tell, first edition. When was the first edition of this thing published? I don't remember. 1987 maybe? I have to look and see. 1988.
1988. Wow.
98. Oh,
6 years before I was born.
Wow, it's so cool. So, do you recommend us to read it? No, of course.
Oh, I do. The latest edition, he continues to improve it, etc. In fact, I have a list of my recommended design books, if I can find the link that you can actually go to.
Of course, it could be great.
See if I find it there. Design for developers. Okay, Billy, surely you got it here somewhere. Oh, actually, I think I made it. I usually use Bitly, but I think I just put it as a link right off my website. No, Billy. Hang on. Sorry, I typed it in wrong. Yeah, there it is. Okay, let me copy this into the chat for you.
thank you.
You are welcome. Yeah, there's about 10 books, I think, in that list.
Yeah, cool.
Some of them are about design principles.
Mhm.
Talked about earlier. Some of them are about sort of philosophy of design. I think the Donald Norman book would be there. And then some of them are about design process, like sketching, user experiences, and 101 design methods. And then there's a really interesting book, a couple of books about creativity. Both of them are really good. Ken Robinson's book, Out of Our Minds, is really an interesting, again, kind of philosophy of creativity. And then Twyla Tharp, The Creative Habit. That's a book on sort of fostering creativity in your own life, and I think I found it to be very helpful. And then The Science of UI, that last book down there, Designing with the Mind in Mind, is about the perception and cognition and how that impacts. And that's almost an essential book, really, for a computer software designer.
Okay. We will take a look
At your recommendation.
Yeah, for sure.
I did a session with a lot of examples from that book in London last January. You can if you search Billy Hollis London YouTube, you'll see me presenting a lot of examples from that book, as well as examples from other places, including some I made up on my own.
Okay.
Yes, there's a lot of results for your conference on YouTube.
But if you put London in there, typically that one will come up as the first
one.
video. Yeah.
Okay. So it was in London, or it was like remotely, like our.
No, it was actually, that was the last thing I did before the pandemic began.
It's cool.
I came back the day that President Trump banned travel from China. Just to show you the timing. So, but it was it was physically on site in the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Center, if you know where that is, down across from Westminster Abbey.
Okay.
Beautiful part of London, absolutely
Beautiful.
wonderful.
Maybe go to the next question. There is I think it's the last question we had.
Yeah.
So the question is, in your long career path, you must have contributed to a proportional gain of experience in the domain of design. What can you say that are the most significant lessons you have learned during all these years?
I think probably the most significant idea, and I mean, I'm not the only one to come up with this by any means, but I did come up with it on my own when I first began starting down this path, was that I call it experimental design. If I have a design problem, I am not satisfied to find one solution for it. Instead, I want to find multiple approaches, multiple solutions, and compare them to one another. And that's one of the things you really have to do to be innovative. Because when you begin to design for a particular problem, you are unconsciously influenced by convention, the way things have always been done. So you will probably produce a design that is too influenced by convention. If you put that design aside and then go, let's suppose I can't do it this way. What's another approach quite different from this that would be, then very often you'll come up with a much more innovative design. And then I often go to 3 or 4 different possibilities.
Okay.
And I find that's one of the hardest things to get developers particularly to do, because when they come up with one design, they sort of lock it into their mind. It's very hard for them to think outside that at that point. So that technique has served me well now for 25 years. I think I first hit up on this with a project I did in 1996.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I was
so-
born. This time I was born.
Okay. We have teachers that talk about this also, like to expand all the solutions world, let's say in the beginning, to finish by just choose one or no, or maybe just continue sketching and prototyping with all these solutions to finishing by choosing one thing.
Choosing something that you will actually put into a production process to create the software.
I have a personal question. Do Microsoft have a special department for HoloLens, Windows, Teams, Twitter, etc.?
I'm sorry,
Those Microsoft have special department for designing.
Oh, well, they don't really have a special department. They do have a chief design officer, but I don't consider her a designer. She came from the Windows. She was a C++ developer on the Windows team for a long time, and the Office team. And so they do have designers all over the company now, and that used to not be the case. But they still are more focused on technology, programming. That is, to advance within Microsoft, you have to be a technologist. Designers don't tend to rise quickly in the company. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but in general, design is viewed as something they have to have, but I find they don't embrace it as much as they should. And a lot of their design efforts, I would consider immature. That they're trying to break free from the past. They really are, but they often make mistakes. I look at some of the products that they've done. Paint 3D would be an excellent example. Paint 3D is just horribly badly designed. And I don't I mean, they should be ashamed of it, to be honest. But then I do see them starting to put things in Windows that do work better. I don't understand that in some respects. I look at browsers, for example, and I think probably the best experience in a browser is Opera. Have you guys looked at Opera? Opera is a very, very good design from a browser perspective. And why can't Microsoft learn lessons from that and make Edge that good? They put some things in Edge that are interesting, but some of the basics that Opera just gets right, they don't. So but they mature over time. Their biggest design disaster, of course, was Windows 8. And they learned from that disaster that you can't just say you're going to do great design and do weird, cool, out of different things. Windows 8 is to me the ultimate example of just because it's different doesn't mean it's good. And they learned a lesson from that, and they started being more deliberate about design. But the problem they face, that most companies face when they get into design, is it takes time to become mature as a designer. It's not, see, technology people, especially very smart technology people, think, oh, I need to become an expert at this technology. I'll do it in 2 weeks and I'll become really expert. You can't do design that way. It requires practice. It requires
Experiences.
All kinds of experiences. It requires an understanding of principles. It requires building a process. It just isn't something that you just it's a discipline. It's not a skill. It's a discipline. And to me, you can learn a skill sometimes quickly, but to learn a discipline takes time, and Microsoft is still going through that process.
So they're on the good way, but they have to improve.
Yes, they've made some substantial, we would say, strides in English. But they have come a long way, but they still have a ways to go.
Okay.
My personal thing I will that they have actually made a big leap when they redesigned Visual Studio.
Oh, we don't know how it was before.
Visual Studio is based on a product produced in 1991, and it is recognizably the same interaction patterns, etc., as it was then. And it's time to completely rethink it. But of course, if they do, millions of developers will scream about things being different. So
and learn again how to use it and everything.
Maybe just a little question. You're not the first one that I hear that is not happy with what Windows 8 is looking. But can you tell me one major error, one example of what Windows 8 did wrong?
Well, I can give you probably several small examples.
Yeah.
But if you really want to see an analysis, we talked about Donald Norman. He and Jakob Nielsen have a company for usability and design. And so Jakob Nielsen is Norman's partner, and he wrote an article in 2012 spelling out all the things wrong.
That is wrong with Windows 8.
Yeah, and that's worth reading. And I thought, see, that kept me from having to write anything like that, because if I had, I would have lost some friends inside my. One chief thing is visibility. When someone walks up to something, especially when you have an entire range of types of users, if it's not clear what to do, then you've failed at the most fundamental beginning of the design of a system. And there is a famous YouTube video that was taken during the beta where a guy gives his dad a Windows 8 laptop, and his dad doesn't get anywhere in 15 minutes. Now, our guideline from a design perspective is if people don't make progress in 30 seconds, they're probably just going to give up. So visibility, they got the colors wrong. Those bright Power Ranger colors, you know the Power Rangers, do they have?
Yes.
Those bright colors, and they were meaningless colors. They didn't mean anything. If families of applications had the same color family, then that would have been using color in some meaningful fashion. But apparently the colors for the tiles in the application, in the main interface, were just chosen at random. They were all very bright, and they were just randomly chosen. And then the final thing I'll mention there was that Microsoft made a key mistake about the nature of their user. And they did it because they were trying to compete with the iPad. And so Windows 8, the main interface, has no concept of folders, because their research said that that people who use those kinds of devices, didn't understand the concept of folders. They said fold. They had their watchword was folders are where apps go to die. That people just never go there. Well, that's probably true of iPad users.
Yeah.
But it isn't true of people in companies who use Windows. And so the fact that you didn't have any good way to organize the thing you use all day long was a huge design mistake. You design for the people who use your software. They decided to make a design to appeal to new users, and I understand that, but but you don't do that at the sacrifice of your old users. You have to bring those together. So that was a huge mistake, and I could go through some more, but that's probably
the main one.
Yeah.
Of course, it was the fact of not using folders is for the mobile device as a phone and
Windows Phone, yeah.
Yes, that works pretty well on a mobile device. It's controllable in terms of the number of things going on, but it doesn't really work when you're talking about the complexity of a desktop.
You do not interact with your phone as the same you interact with your computer, of course, yes.
And in essence, I mean, there are logical constructs that are not, I mean, iOS has the idea of folders now. They don't call it that, but there's an icon. You can have an icon on your iPhone that when you click it, it brings up a window of more apps.
Yeah.
Well, that's a folder.
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you have more questions.
Don't have any more question for my side.
So, do you have question for us?
No, this has been an interesting interview, and I've said a few things I don't think I've said in other interviews, which is good. And I will mostly just say it makes me feel really good to see the development of this discipline, understanding that when I started, there just weren't very many people doing it.
Yeah, it's growing very fast, I think.
Yeah, I'm told that there are numbers that the number of people in the design space is going up by a factor of 10 every 6 or 8 years.
Wow.
Oh,
but we need them. We need them. So that's good. We went through a phase in, let's call it 2005 up to about 2015, in which the number of people who did design were exploding pretty quickly, but it was mostly web design centered around aesthetics and layout.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not where you add the value.
No.
You add the value with interaction and the data visibility, visualization, and the search experience, helping people find what they want really quickly. We've only recently started to see that become a standard part of design, and I'm really happy to see that and to see people studying it even at the college level. I wish there had been a program like yours when I was at university.
Yeah, it's very
right.
I would have loved it.
But I've noticed during internships that people are still kind of reticent to HCI. I was working on data visualizations with a mathematician, and so he had a big data set and he gave it to me, and I was trying to explain that I needed a little more time to prototype some things, give him a few examples, and he was like, no, that's just a waste of time, just start coding. And so it was interesting to hear you talk about it, because it gives us more arguments and more tangible things to be able to defend why it's important. And
people in STEM I'm sorry, that's an acronym we use here. Science, technology, engineering, math, STEM. People in those fields, they really don't. I'm not really sure why it is, but the vast majority of them do not. They solve problems so intuitively that they don't understand why other people have to work through the problems.
For them it's like too long.
Yeah, they solve problems intuitively, and they solve those problems for themselves and other people who are just like them. And so this idea of solving problems for a broader context, for different kinds of people and a bigger range of people, and innovating using technologies to go beyond the way people have done it in the past, that's a hard thing for them to pick up. But the good news is this: if you are ever able to come up with a design that is groundbreaking and innovative and completely makes sense to them the first time that they see it, they'll never doubt you again.
That's true, yeah.
They have to see it. They have to see those kind of results. And I've seen that so many times. If I had to come up with like another major lesson to talk about, people get attached to software that they know how to use, even if it's not well designed. Because they already know how to use it. That's a sunk cost, as we say in English, for them. So they don't want to change anything. And if you change a little bit, that actually will generate a lot of resistance. The way to overcome the resistance is to completely change it into something radically different, but which fits their job a lot better. Once they see something that's well designed, they lose their preference for the older stuff. But you have to show it to them before that happens. Meaning your responsibility to produce that design that's all on you. They can't tell you what that's supposed to look like. No more than someone who comes out of a bad movie can tell you how to write a better movie script. They don't know that. That's not their.
It's just an interpretation.
Yeah. So yeah, keep at it. But the good news is that gets better every year. Fewer people give you that grief every year as design becomes a more ingrained, entrenched part of the world.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you for this
you're welcome.
information.
I'm sorry
everything.
Sorry for the mix-up, but we got in about an hour of interview, didn't we? So that's good. And I'm happy to do it. If you have follow-up questions, you should send those along to me.
Oh, thank you.
We will do it.
Very nice. Yeah, we will do it. We have a lot of questions all the time. So. And it was super interesting, like really very interesting.
Really
Good.
interesting.
Very cool.
Well, I'm glad it was worth your time then.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, thank you. So have a good day. We will have good evening.
You have a good evening, and I will have a good day.
Yeah, I hope so. Well,
goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.